Hey there, sociologists. It's time to look at community again, and this our sixth lesson on the topic. So, our learning goals for today, I've got a few here. You're going to know what belonging to a community means. You're going to know what social capital means. Good term to drop into some answers there. You're going to be able to argue a position. You're going to have an activity where you're going to try to argue in favour of something. And you're going to be able to analyse. Remember, the harder questions in the exam asks you to analyze and to evaluate stuff. So we're going to practice starting to do that. Okay, belonging to a community. So belonging comes from a few different places. From reciprocity, that just means give and take. Yeah, so you give things to the community and you also take things from the community. It comes from trusting other people in your community and goodwill, obviously. And friendship, yeah. So people who belong in their communities are friends with people in their community. I think that's fairly straightforward. However, everyone has got a different experience of community, yeah? Some better, some worse. Even two different people in the same community will have a different experience of their community. Different levels of trust, different levels of goodwill, different levels of friendship with other members in the community. Here are some random pictures that came up when I typed in belonging to a community. So these things are all important for a vibrant community. Vitality, democratic engagement, not just voting, of course. That's like participating in conversations, protests if need be. Education, health, leisure, culture, nice living standards, a lovely environment with a duck or two, and time use. So on my random searching around the internet, I found a government department called the Australian Institute of Family Studies, and they produce research papers. And here's one from 4 years ago: community engagement, a key strategy for improving outcomes for Australian families. So here they go. They have a go at trying to define what is a community. They say there's little agreement about the nature of community or whether it's synonymous with neighbourhood. So interesting. There's a few things I want to point out. There are two meanings of community: geographical area and as a set of relationships. I would say that in sociology we think of community in mostly as a set of relationships. Yeah, communities are often geographically bound, but due to the internet, that's not always the case anymore. Here they reference the fact that communities have a positive or negative impact on mental and physical health. Yay, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. The government is getting involved in defining communities, and it's a big issue. Okay, social capital, what is it? You remember it's that psychological resource. So it's the amount and the quality of networks and relationships in a community. That's a definition. That's a definition of it. You can also say it's the ability to influence and feel empowered. But there is a little bit of disagreement amongst sociologists about the meaning of social capital. Some say it's something that a person has. That's Helen Sullivan believes that social capital is an individual thing. And others, like Robert Putnam, a very famous political science philosopher, says that it's something that the entire community has. So there you go. Here in this diagram we see a few things that influence social capital. So yeah, as mentioned, it's all about networks and belonging. It helps to have safety. Reciprocity is, it's giving and taking. Participating in society increases your social capital. Having power, citizen power, increases social capital. And diversity and living a values-led life all contribute to social capital. Social capital is also an engine of innovation. So if you want an innovative society that comes up with new, not just businesses, but new ways of doing things, social capital is really important. How's that done? You have a network of relationships, which leads to respect. When people share values and talk to each other, new knowledge is generated, and that stuff is used to achieve goals. Another fancy term here, social cohesion. Now remember, a lot of these terms are just fancy academic terms for things that you already know about, okay? So you've just got to match up this word with sort of the idea that you've already got in your head. You've all been living in society for many, many years now, so most people have got a basic understanding of sociology at some level. Social cohesion is the positive relationships that bind people together. It means that you don't experience exclusion or marginalization, yeah? Social cohesion is the opposite of social exclusion. And again, it's all about trust. If you are trusted and trust others in your community, social cohesion will come along with that. So here's the pyramid of social cohesion. All these things need to exist for you to have a socially cohesive community. There needs to be participation, everybody taking part. There needs to be belonging, which we've looked at already. There should be social justice and equity, acceptance, not rejection, and people should feel a sense of worth. Now here's a really interesting graph from the OECD, which is just a group of rich countries. This was looking at social cohesion and comparing it to GDP, to per capita. So basically, on the vertical scale, you've got how rich your country is, and on the horizontal scale, you've got how much social cohesion there is, right? So the question is there a link between social cohesion and income? Yes. Yeah. All of the countries that are above this average GDP, so all these countries up here, this is above the average, yeah, this is the money thing here. Everyone who's doing well in GDP per capita is also doing well in social cohesion. Yeah, this group of countries here, they're rich and they have high levels of social cohesion. So there you go. So countries that are rich and have high levels of social cohesion, we've got Australia's in there, New Zealand's in there, and a lot of the European countries. So it's not necessarily that income itself generates social cohesion. It's the things that that income can do. So, you know, high income can improve health outcomes, education outcomes. You can spend money on justice, so there's reduced crime, all of which improve social cohesion. And here is our activity for today. It's about arguing a position. So you're going to take a position and you're going to argue in favor of it. So using your knowledge and at least one piece of online research, you'll have to do that. Pick one of these two topics and write a paragraph, minimum 5 sentences, arguing in favor of it. And here are the two choices. The first one is, technology creates greater face-to-face social interaction and community participation. If you want to, write a paragraph arguing in favor of that, saying it's correct. And I need you to include some online research, so something that you didn't get from this video or the textbook. Or if you prefer, you can argue in favor of this statement: technology erodes, threatens, and weakens face-to-face social interaction and community participation. So there's one arguing in favor of technology as being beneficial for social cohesion, and one saying it's not so beneficial. So pick one of those two and write me a paragraph, minimum 5 sentences. Our first video today is called Social Capital Theory. Take it away.
In this video, we're going to talk about social capital theory and how we can apply it in our own professional lives. So let's get into the details. Hey there, welcome back. Alex Lyon here, and this channel Communication Coach is here to help you grow as a leader. And in this video, we're going to talk about social capital, specifically Robert Putnam's approach, then Pierre Bourdieu's approach, but ultimately I want to talk about practical applications because this concept has real use when we talk about our own careers as leaders and as professionals in the world. So first I want to talk about Robert Putnam's approach to social capital. He wrote about this extensively over the years, and especially in his book called Bowling Alone, which became very popular. And his summation of the concept is this, that social networks have value. So he's talking about not just the companionship or the emotional support we get from relationships, but our social connections themselves provide us as individuals and as a community value. So what exactly is he talking about? Well, let's break down 4 of the ways that we get value out of our social networks. And he mentions these on his website, robertdputnam.com. And I'll put links to all these resources in the description below the video so you can look at those on your own. But the first benefit is information. Our social networks provide us information that we would not hear about otherwise. So when we're talking to people we know, we hear about job and career opportunities, we hear about potential investment opportunities. And if we didn't know these people and weren't interacting with them, we just would never hear about it. And so those doors would not be open to us. Another benefit is reciprocity, or what we might call mutual aid. In other words, people that have relationships and connections help each other, and then people return the favor. And that's one of the ways that relationships work. If you invest in these relationships, you get the benefit of mutual aid. Number 3, collective action. So as a group, you're working together, and that group action has a lot more impact than any individual action that you might take. So when you're working on a group or a task or something together, you build a foundation of relationship connections that then you can put into use in the future. So that collective action is a very powerful resource, a benefit of good relationship connections. And 4th, our identities and our sense of solidarity is another benefit of having relationship connections with other people. There's a sense of empowerment that we feel when we feel like we're part of a group, like we're connected to a community. We're a real member of that community. Now, Putnam talks about all these ideas, but he's really concerned about the disintegration of relationships, the weakening of the ties that we have with other people. And when these get weakened, we lose the benefit of all those resources that we just mentioned. He talks about over the past 25 years how there's been a 58% drop in attendance at club meetings. So a club meeting is some local club you might belong to, like a Rotary Club or some other community club. We're losing those connections. A 43% drop in family dinners. So we're not, as much as we used to, eating dinner together as a family in one place. It becomes a struggle. We're all so busy. We're pulled in different directions. It's very difficult to do that. 35% drop in having friends over. I know this is true in my life. It's very hard to actually get together with friends. Now, this is very ironic if you think about it, because we're more connected than ever through technology. You can get on social media and connect with people. And despite this technical connection, our relationships, our actual strong relationships with in-person people are really weakening over the decades. So that's a big concern, because by losing those relationships, we lose all the benefits that come from those social ties. We're missing out on that potential social capital that we could have. So let's pivot now and talk about Pierre Bourdieu. So he is a French theorist, and actually he wrote about this before Putnam in the 1980s. And he wrote about it extensively in articles and books. I actually cited him frequently in my dissertation and in several journal articles that I published. And his look at social capital is described this way: the collection of resources or potential resources that our durable network of relationships connect us to. So in the same way as Putnam, our relational ties, our network of relationship connections, connect us to other valuable resources or potentially valuable resources. We might not actually use those resources, but they're there. They're part of our network. Now, where Bourdieu differs is in the aspect of power. He looks a lot at how power gets maintained through the exclusivity of relationships. So he's really looking at powerful groups and communities in France, and he was noticing how there was a direct management of the access to that group membership, because if once you were in the group, you had access to a lot of the resources that the group had. So he saw this management of access and membership in a group as a way to keep society stratified. So rich and powerful people continue to associate with rich and powerful people, and the rest of society don't have access to that. Now, I understand this point of view, and I definitely see this in society and all over the world. This is obviously happening. But if you think about it, it's not necessarily done for some evil purposes. In fact, you do it and I do it. So you might have a group of friends that you grew up with, a group of friends that you have known over time, and you feel a sense of group membership with them. But that doesn't mean that every new person you meet instantly becomes part of your trusted inner circle. So in some ways, quite innocently, you manage access to your social networks as well. And you manage, by doing so, access to the resources. So until you trust someone and really know someone, you're not going to open up your life to them. You're not going to connect them with other people that you know and love and trust unless you know them for long enough to establish some foundation in that relationship. Now let's pivot now to talk about how you can use these kinds of concepts in your own professional life. So there are 5 ways that you can begin taking this concept of social capital seriously for your benefit and for the benefit of everybody around you. And the first one is to build positive relationships with the people right around you. Now this might seem obvious, but I know a lot of people who don't seem to care about the quality of their relationships with the people around them. They might not care how they come across. They might not care if they take advantage of somebody. But when you start caring about the people around you and treating them well, in the long run, those relationships will then be there for everybody's mutual benefit. The second way to apply this is to provide some value to the other people. So in other words, what can you do for them? How can you help them? And you begin to look for ways to add value and help other people. And that's where you become a giver, not a taker. So you probably know some people in your circles who are more takers. They're looking for what they can get out of a situation. And you don't want to be that person. You always want to look to give. The third way is to help other people to connect. So you might not have any direct help that you can really offer a person that you know or meet, but you might be able to connect them to somebody who can. So I have a good friend who's really into real estate and he knows everything about it, but he doesn't really help me directly. If I have a question, I text him or call him and he almost instantly gets back to me and connects me to someone who can help me, like a contractor or a plumber, someone that can help me with an important question. So by connecting me to other people, he's investing in his relationship with me. So that's another way you can help people out. You might not have anything directly to offer, but connect them to the people that can help them and you become a part of the solution. You become an important part of that social network. The fourth way is to collaborate. So when you're working with people, even on somewhat ordinary jobs or tasks or projects, you build a foundation of trust and working knowledge with each other. And then those relationships will be there later if you need to pull another team together for a future project. So think beyond any one project and how this can help for future projects, future mutual aid and collective action. And number 5, never take advantage of other people. There's a lot of short-term thinking out there in the world, and people are looking for an angle and how they can quickly take advantage and get the upper hand. But what that'll do in that network of relationships that you're connected to is that word will get out, people won't trust you as much, it's really going to undermine your credibility. And even one bad decision can take years or months to rebuild from. So consider the long-term value of your relationship connections, not just some short-term, momentary, strategic advantage. You have to think about the long run. So those are some of the tips and ways that we can apply this theoretical concept to our own professional lives. So question of the day, how does social capital apply to you as a professional? I would love to hear your comments, possibly your questions in that section below the video, and I look forward to reading those. So thanks for tuning in. God bless, and I will see you in the next video.
What is social cohesion? This video will explain in more detail.
The term mob mentality brings to mind a crowd of angry people, often carrying torches and pitchforks, and the violent things this sort of crowd can do. Not every incident of mob mentality is so dramatic, though. Often it's a much quieter event, and takes place in boardrooms and voting booths. The power of groups to repress originality is well documented. However, groups can also serve important functions. Even if an important scientific discovery can be made by a single person, the task of bringing that discovery to life often falls to a group of engineers and other scientists. How do groups form and stay together? What is it that keeps a group of individuals in a coherent relationship without everyone going their separate ways? Social cohesion is the set of characteristics that keep a group able to function as a unit. What constitutes group cohesion really depends on whom you ask. For instance, psychologists look at individuals' traits and similarities among the group members. Social psychologists treat cohesion as a trait that combines with others in order to influence the way the group does things. Sociologists tend to look at cohesion as a structural issue, measuring how the interlocking parts of the whole group interact to allow the group to function. Beyond all these disciplinary differences, there are some generalizations we can make about how groups function as a unit. First, there are some terms we should define to get started. The first concept is that of incentive. An incentive is a reward offered to get a person to do something. Anyone who has worked a job they don't like that much is familiar with incentives. Pay functions as an incentive to keep working. People with incentives to work as a group will do better than those without. Another important concept is that of social norms. Like other norms, social norms are standards of behavior. These norms apply to the function individuals have in the group. Norms can include a dress code, standards of conduct, or admission standards. Norms tend to keep a group working better together as long as the norms are uniformly enforced. Selectively ignoring norms tends to result in disciplinary measures for group members. If the group as a whole ignores norms, cohesion could be weakened by a feeling of apathy toward the norms and group as a whole. There are many kinds of proverbial glue that can help groups stick together. The three we will discuss here are purpose, magnetism, and interpersonal factors. The purpose of a group has much to do with how closely a group sticks together. More accurately, cohesion can be determined by how closely the purpose of the group matches the motivations and talents of its members. A group may have a really lofty goal, like ending world hunger. Group members may want to do it and really desire success. If the group doesn't have the resources or expertise, then their goal will remain out of reach, and people who believe in the goal of the group might find it better to go elsewhere.
Okay, nice simple reflection activity today. I want you to summarize today's lesson in exactly 12 words. Homework, it's a practice response. So first I want you to read the relevant 2 pages from that textbook, and then here's a practice response. So here's the question. Referring to the representation, analyze the various factors that challenge social cohesion in the 21st century. You might want to write down that practice response question. Remember, analyzing is separating things out and explaining how together they make up a whole. So what are the various factors that challenge social cohesion? Separate out those different challenges, and then you need to include statements explaining how together they challenge social cohesion. So it's not enough just to go, here's 1 challenge, here's 2 challenges, here's 3 challenges. The end, you then need to have a statement at the end where you say how these 3 things together challenge social cohesion. Do they connect? Do they influence each other? What's their overall effect? Okay, so you might want to write that down, because on the next slide I'm going to show you the representation. It's a short piece of text from our former race commissioner. Okay, so this is a speech delivered by Dr. Tim Salfomasane. I feel good about that. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, at the ANU, that's the Australian National University. This is a research university set up by the government in Canberra. So his speech was called The Challenge of Social Cohesion, delivered at the Research School of Psychology. And this is the representation that you are referring to in your practice response. So it's in white text, but I'm not saying you have to write this down. I'm just going to read it. We live in interesting times. We live in times when tolerance and harmony are becoming elusive, when intolerance and division are becoming the norm. In the United States, Donald Trump is a Republican nominee for president. Obviously, this was written in 2015 or so. Having called for a wall to be built along the American border with Mexico, and having proposed a ban on Muslims entering the country. For the past 2 years since the police shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, racial strife has afflicted many cities across America. Protests, civil unrest, and sometimes violent confrontations have occurred with unerring frequency. That's quite topical, isn't it? In Britain, we've seen Brexit. That's Britain leaving the EU. Many of those voting for an exit from the European Union were motivated by a desire for Britain to reclaim its sovereignty on matters of immigration. There was a steep rise in hate crimes tied to the Brexit vote. According to authorities, there were more than 3,000 allegations of hate crimes made to UK police in the week before and after the June 23 vote. That's 42% spike compared to the previous year. In France, mayors from about 30 French towns along the sun-soaked Riviera have enforced a ban on the burkini. The burkini is a bikini with that covers a lot more of your body, but you can swim in it. Many have said that they will refuse to accept a recent ruling by the Council of State, France's highest administrative court, that held the ban to be unconstitutional. Okay, so in this speech, Tim looks at 3 countries that have challenges to their social cohesion. In the US, their president is arguably racist, and there's a lot of racial inequality, especially with the way that police interact with the community. In Britain, British people have voted to leave the EU, which was a big European social cohesion political experiment, and they want out of that, so they want to reduce their social cohesion. And in France, France already has a ban on facial coverings in public. I don't know that there's many countries like that, which is seen as quite anti-Muslim. And now they've enforced a ban on the burkini, even though France's highest court is saying that that's unconstitutional. So there you go. 3 challenges to social cohesion, 1 in the USA, 1 in Britain, 1 in France. That is the representation that you are going to refer to. And you might want to leave that slide up when you're answering the question. But just a reminder, the question is, referring to the representation, analyze the various factors that challenge social cohesion in the 21st century. So when you refer to the representation, you're going to be talking about those 3 countries. But what are the factors that challenge social cohesion? That's up to you. But you're analyzing them. You're not just listing them one after the other. You've got to explain how they interact and have an overall effect on social cohesion. Thank you so much for participating in today's lesson. As always, keep it real.